Today we answer the age-old question, which is better, a carry-on or a checked bag? We'll cover the pros and cons of each, including cost considerations, baggage requirements in different parts of the world, how you can bring extra bags for free, and everything I've learned after visiting over 50 countries in the past 3 years that can help you make the right packing decision on your next trip. Carry-ons come in many shapes and sizes, from traditional small suitcases that go in the overhead bin to large backpacks or duffel bags. But in general, your carry-on size limit is 22 by 14 by 9 inches. Technically, some international airlines have slightly smaller limits, and you can see my international size carry-on here next to Aaron's slightly larger carry-on that technically only meets those domestic requirements. But again, we've taken both of these bags to over 50 countries, including a number of flights on very small, sketchy biplanes, and we have never had any issues with Aaron's slightly larger bag, so make of that what you want. But a carry-on could also be a large backpack or a duffel bag. Just remember that your carry-on is different than a personal item, and those size limits are gonna be very different than a carry-on for a majority of airlines. Checked bags, on the other hand, would be the ones that you hand over to the airline when you check in at the airport and go underneath the plane. And while the limits are, again, going to vary from one airline to the next, generally you want to keep your checked bags under 62 linear inches total, which for your average checked bag would be 27 by 21 by 14 inches. Lots of checked bags are well under those limits, but you'll also have a weight limit, which is typically around 50 pounds or 23 kilograms, or if you're flying in premium cabins, you might get an extra checked bag or a higher limit of 70 pounds. Beyond that, if you're traveling with more than 70 pounds of stuff, I have a lot of other questions. Okay, now that we've got all of those numbers out of the way, let's finally get into the pros and cons of each, starting with carry-ons. The biggest pro, in my opinion, is simply how much easier it is to get around with just a small carry-on or a backpack. And if you've ever dragged your 50-pound checked bag up a flight of steps onto a hot, overcrowded train, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. Another pro is the potential to avoid baggage fees altogether. I sound like a broken record, but again, this is going to vary from one flight to the next, but many airlines allow you to bring a carry-on for free, but may charge you extra for checked bags. And this model is becoming more and more common. Southwest, I'm looking at you. But also, in some cases, bringing just a carry-on could allow you to book a lower category and cheaper ticket. So instead of booking standard economy just so you can bring a checked bag for free, maybe you could now book economy basic and save yourself some cash right out of the gate simply by packing lighter. You also eliminate, for the most part, the risk of lost or delayed luggage, which we all know can completely derail a trip. And if you're traveling with anything of value, like I usually travel with a ton of camera gear, then I like knowing that I have all of that expensive stuff in my possession at all times, and it's not gonna be thrown around by the baggage handlers underneath the plane. Packing in a carry-on also means you can skip baggage claim and or check in altogether, saving you time when you get to your destination, but also allowing you to just get home faster at the end of your trip. Lastly, there's also less temptation to overpack with a carry-on, since I found if I give myself a larger bag for a trip, then I will find a way to fill that whether I need that much stuff or not. That does, however, bring us to the carry-on cons, with the first and most obvious being the limited size and weight restrictions of a carry-on bag. Personally, I've only run into weight issues one time with my carry-on. Most of the time they never even weigh it, but you obviously won't be able to pack as much stuff in a carry-on when compared to a checked bag. And this is especially true when it comes to toiletries, since TSA and other security administrations around the world have much tighter restrictions on liquids and certain electronics with a carry-on compared to checked bags. With TSA, this means no individual container can be more than 3.4 ounces or 100 milliliters, with many airports around the world having very strict one clear quart-size Ziploc bag requirements that will be enforced. London Heathrow, I'm looking at you. So unless you want to be throwing away all of your expensive makeup or toiletries in the security line, be sure to keep these limitations in mind. And then there's the con that you have to drag your carry-on with you the entire travel day instead of handing it off at the check-in counter and not having to worry about it. Plus, you're not always guaranteed overhead bin space, and again, I haven't run into many issues with this over the years, but a fully booked plane where you have to gate check your carry-on is definitely not ideal. All right, moving on from there, let's talk pros and cons for or checked bags, and we'll move through these pretty quick because they're pretty much the opposite of all the things we just talked about. The big pro is that you have more space to pack more stuff, which depending on the trip could be a game changer. You also don't have to worry about the liquid requirements that we just talked about, and you can be completely hands-free at the airport since once you check in, the airline will take care of everything else. Hopefully, which brings us to the cons, of course. Lost or damaged bags are always a risk when checking a bag, and while this can be helped with a $20 air tag and by booking your flight with a good travel credit card that offers baggage insurance, neither of those can make your bag magically appear when you land in a new country and your bag is nowhere to be found. You'll also have to wait at check-in and at baggage claim, and while some airlines like Delta and Alaska will give you bonus miles if it takes over 20 minutes for your checked bag to arrive at the carousel, I'm not sure that that's a good use of your precious time while traveling. Not to mention, of course, you'll be dragging that big heavy bag on planes, trains, automobiles, cobblestone streets, and everything in between. But the biggest con, in my opinion, again brings us back to packing, and that is the simple fact that you will be much more tempted to overpack if you opt for a checked bag. Maybe this is just me, but again, anytime I've given myself a larger bag, I generally tend to find a way to overpack. So with all of those pros and cons being considered, which is better, a carry-on or a checked bag? Well, first of all, it's really a personal decision since everyone's travel style and needs are going to be different, and it also really depends on the type of trip you're going on. While I always use carry-ons, I do frequently use different packing setups from one trip to the next, depending on how long we'll be gone and how frequently we'll be moving from one location to the next. It's also worth pointing out here that a number of co-branded credit cards, as well as a few general travel credit cards, offer free checked bags as a benefit. So if you do fall in the checked bag crowd, then that is something you'll want to look into since it could save you a lot of money. However, if you want my opinion, which if you've made it this far in the video, hopefully you do, then I think the pros of a carry-on bag far outweigh the benefits of a checked bag. And I personally have not checked a bag in years. We've had trips where we were gone for multiple months at a time and we still packed everything in carry-ons, and I will frequently go away for weeks at a time bringing nothing but a backpack. But that's just what works for me, and I'll be the first to admit that over the years I've had the chance to highly optimize my travel gear to be as compact and lightweight as possible, which I realize is not the norm for more casual travelers. But if you're still on the fence, the biggest thing to consider is of course the type of trip you're going on. If you're gonna be in one place for an extended time and won't be moving from one location to the next, then maybe it makes sense to bring a checked bag. On the other hand, if you're doing a train trip through Europe, for example, bouncing from plane to Uber to train to hotel, then I would do everything in your power to leave that checked bag at home. Trust me, the extra few outfits will not be worth the stress of dragging a 50-pound bag with you everywhere you go on that type of trip. But again, all of this is just my opinion, and I'm sure all of you have thoughts on this debate, so I'd love to hear about those down in the comment section. And while you're down there, be sure to check out our favorite travel accessories page, along with our top travel credit cards page, both of which can help you get started on planning your next adventure. But as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.